just your home, the mirror, and you.
The Chinese trade envoy is heading to Washington in advance of a Friday deadline when the Trump administration warns it will once again hike tariffs on $200 billion of additional Chinese goods. That's on top of the tariffs they have now. Now, for their part, the Chinese are reportedly preparing, not surprisingly, possible retaliatory tariffs. And it's hard to say that the nascent trade war thus far has been either good or easy to win, though we should also say its effects have been largely manageable. But among those who have taken it hardest on the chin are American farmers. According to the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, U.S. total exports of agricultural products to China totaled $9.3 billion in 2018, and that's less than half of what the U.S. exported just 1 year prior, according to an archived version of the same data available online. Democrat Jon Tester of Montana is himself a farmer, one of only a handful in the Senate. He joins me now to talk about trade and more. Senator, good to have you. How tangible have the effects been to farmers in your state, Montana, in this trade war?
Well, I think it's going to be really serious over the next few months, Chris, and I'll tell you why. We've been dealing with the impacts of the tariffs for some time, and I think just about everybody in rural America agrees we need to hold China accountable. The problem is now we're in planting season and have planted in a good portion of the country, and there's nothing worth much money at all. Wheat prices might be $1 higher than they were 41 years ago when my wife and I took over the farm. That point in time, I can tell you, in 1978, you could buy a pickup for less than $10,000. Now you're looking at 5 times that much for a pickup.
Wait, you're saying wait a second. In actual nominal dollars, it's only $1
that's
more
correct.
now?
That's not inflation.
Wow.
No, if I call up my elevator in Big Sandy, Montana right now, it's less than 4.5 a bushel. And I can tell you, when I moved out the farm in May of 1978, I remember going over and talking to my neighbor about wheat being $3.50 a bushel and whether I should sell it or not because I wanted to get a better price because that was too low. Look, this is the 21st century. We've got people in production agriculture out there that are hurting. Go talk to the bankers. They will tell you that these guys are living by a thread. The margins aren't that wide enough in the best of times. And now we're almost totally dependent on subsidies because the trade and the trade with other nations, foreign trade especially, has been screwed up by these tariffs. And I would say one more thing, Chris, and people in agriculture know this. A lot of these trade relationships have not been worked on for decades. They've been worked on for generations. And quite frankly, to fritter them away really puts a death nail into rural America. And I am very, very concerned that we may see a repeat of the 1980s in the next few years if something doesn't change, and change pretty darn fast with these tariffs.
1980s, when the interest rates forced foreclosures and family farms across the country and destroyed huge swaths of rural America.
That's exactly right. We saw the little town that I was born and raised in go from 1,000 people down to 600 today, and much of that was due to what happened with the mass exodus off the land in the 1980s.
Since I have you here, I don't get a chance to talk to you often. I do want to ask you about sort of broader things happening. This sort of constitutional showdown with the president that's developing, particularly in the House. You were just reelected. You represent a state that is a state that's a conservative state, Republican state, at least in presidential elections, so it has a Democratic governor. How do you see this standoff? What do you think Democrats should do?
Well, I think we got to get to the facts. I mean, we got to get the information and all the information. The truth will set you free, and I believe in transparency in government. And any time somebody stands up and says, no, we're not going to give that information, which happens almost all the time, then I think there's something to be hidden there. Whether there is or not, it appears as something is being hidden. You take a look at the Mueller report. I want the Mueller report. I want the whole thing. I want the underlying documents. And guess what? I want everybody in Montana to have access to that, too, and everybody in the United States to have access. Why? Because it will set forth what really happened, what really transpired. And the American people, who are smart people, can make up the decision on who's right, who's wrong, and if anything is screwed up here. Look, it's pretty obvious to me. The Russians interfered in our election. I think the report bears that out. I think our national intelligence agencies bear that out. Let's let the Mueller report speak for itself. And as far as Attorney General Barr, he is the lawyer for the country, not for the president. He should step up and go to the House meetings and talk about what transpired, answer the questions, and put this business to bed.
Is your estimation of him or the president changed over the last several weeks?
Well, with Attorney General Barr, it has. I mean, I was inches away from voting for his confirmation because when I met with him, I thought he was a pretty straight-up guy. But, boy, I'll tell you what, I'm glad it didn't happen because he certainly didn't step up the plate like I thought he would. And I think it's put, he was a very respected person as Attorney General before, and I think now his career is really... he's going to be known for this now, not for any good work he did before. And I think that's pretty unfortunate, but it's of his own doing, so you live with it.
Senator Elizabeth Warren was my guest earlier on the show. You saw her, I'm sure, that she was on the floor today. She talked about her desire that impeachment proceedings begin in the House. She says there's no political expediency exception in the United States Constitution. Do you agree with her?
Well, I think we got to get the facts. Truthfully, I think if you don't have all the facts as you move forward, or as many facts as you possibly can, then you're going to end up in a difficult position. It was interesting today because Senator McConnell got up and said, this is over, and Elizabeth got up later and said, we need to proceed with impeachment. I personally don't agree with either one. I think the route is get more information. If that information bears out we need to impeach, then move forward and do it. And I think that quite frankly, in the Senate, we have to have some help from the Republicans if impeachment were to go through anyway. So I think there's more facts that need to be presented. And assuming those facts are there, then we might be able to get some Republican support and move forward. So
final question for you, I asked Chuck Schumer. It's not a question about impeachment or proceedings. It's just a straightforward question about the president's oath of office. He took an oath of office to uphold and defend the Constitution and to take care the laws are faithfully executed. Do you think he's violated his oath?
In my opinion, I'm not an attorney, but in my opinion, I don't believe that he has acted presidential since his time in the office. I don't think he's represented the best interest of this country. I think he's more represented the best interest of himself, and I think that's very unfortunate.
All right, John Tester, a farmer, as you heard. Farmer first, senator second, I think he would like to say, from the great state of Montana. Great pleasure to have you on, Senator.